Me, I'm 28, and my girlfriend Sarah, F27, have been together for 2 years. Things were okay. Not perfect, but a carefully constructed illusion. She's always been fiercely independent, constantly needing her space, or so she said. I respected that, or at least I desperately tried to. But the little digs, the dismissive sighs, the way she'd roll her eyes when I expressed a need for closeness, it was subtle, insidious gaslighting. I'd mention it, but she'd scoff, "You're just being insecure, babe. I need my autonomy." I wanted to believe her. A few weeks ago, with our 5th anniversary looming, she announced she needed a solo trip to recharge, said she was burnt out, needed some time alone. Work was stressful, she claimed, and the pressure of planning our future was overwhelming. She booked a week at some vague wellness retreat by the coast, refused to give me any specifics, wouldn't even tell me the name of the town. Red flag number one, I know. But I trusted her, or rather, I clung to the idea of trust, terrified of facing the truth. Last night, the night before our anniversary, I was scrolling through Instagram, trying to ignore the gnawing feeling of unease, the icy grip of suspicion that had been tightening around my heart. I saw a photo of a beach that looked suspiciously familiar, a secluded cove she had described in detail but dismissed as too far when I suggested it for a weekend getaway. And tagged in the photo, her ex-boyfriend, Mark, and a caption that read, "Paradise found with my soulmate 3." My stomach dropped through the floor. I zoomed in. There they were, Sarah and Mark, laughing, holding hands, looking sickeningly happy, like they were filming a commercial for eternal bliss. But it wasn't just the photos, it was the comments. Friends, our friends, gushing about how perfect they looked together, how they were meant to be. Sarah even replied to one, "Finally found my way back home." It was a public humiliation, a calculated act of cruelty designed to shatter me. I felt like I'd been sucker punched by a Mack truck. I screenshotted everything, every photo, every story, every comment. I even checked her location history, a luxury resort, not some rustic retreat. And to add insult to injury, a transaction alert popped up on my phone. Sarah had used my credit card to pay for a couple's massage. I didn't call her, I didn't text, I just sat there staring at my phone, trying to comprehend what I was seeing. The betrayal was like a physical blow, a gaping wound that bled into my soul. All those "I need space" excuses, the vague descriptions, "I'll call you later" calls that never came, they were all lies, carefully constructed pieces of a deceitful puzzle. I replayed our relationship in my head, searching for clues for the moment I missed the turn, the moment she started pulling away. Every late night at work, every girls' night out, every time she'd been distant, every time she flinched at my touch, it all made sense now. I started questioning everything, my sanity, my worth, the very fabric of my reality. Then I snapped. The anger, a molten rage, simmered inside me, threatening to erupt. I remembered she'd given me a spare key to her apartment, just in case, she'd said with a saccharine smile. I grabbed it, my hands shaking with barely contained fury, jumped in my car and drove to her place. I needed answers. I needed to confront her. I needed to understand how the woman I loved, the woman I thought loved me, could be so heartlessly cruel. When I got there, it was dark. I let myself in, the key turning in the lock with a sickening click, a sound that echoed the finality of the betrayal. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat in the living room, in the dark, waiting, my heart pounding in my chest like a trapped bird. The silence was deafening, broken only by the frantic rhythm of my breathing. I heard the door open a few hours later, around 2 a.m. She walked in, laughing, talking on the phone, her voice light and carefree, oblivious to the storm brewing in the darkness. "Yeah, it was amazing," she said. "Mark and I had the best time. I'll tell you all about it tomorrow." She hung up and flipped on the light. She froze when she saw me, her laughter dying in her throat, her face draining of color. Her eyes widened in fear, a flicker of panic in their depths. "What are you doing here?" she stammered, her voice trembling. "Surprise," I said, my voice cold, devoid of emotion. "I thought I'd come welcome you back from your solo trip. Happy anniversary." The words dripped with sarcasm, each syllable a venomous barb. I showed her the photos, every single one, including the comments, the tags, the location history, the credit card transaction. Her eyes widened, her face contorted in a mask of guilt and fear. "This isn't what it looks like," she said, her voice shaking, but her eyes darting around the room, searching for an escape. Oh, really? Because it looks like you're on vacation with your ex, holding hands, looking like you're having the time of your life while using my credit card, publicly declaring your love for him. What does it look like, Sarah? It's complicated, she said, her voice rising, a desperate edge creeping into her tone. Mark and I were trying to figure things out. Complicated? You lied to my face for a week. You told me you needed space. You told me you were going to a wellness retreat. You even let me plan our anniversary, knowing you were with him. I did. We went to a wellness retreat, she said, her voice rising, but her eyes avoiding mine. But Mark was there too. It was a coincidence. We just reconnected. A coincidence? You're telling me you just happened to book the same retreat as your ex, the man who broke your heart. I scoffed. And what about that caption, Sarah? Finally found my way back home. What about the couple's massage paid for with my money? Yes, we were friends before we dated. We stayed friends. Friends? Friends don't hold hands on the beach. Friends don't look at each other like that. Friends don't use each other's credit cards. Friends don't publicly humiliate their partners. And Mark isn't just an ex, he's my friend too. He was supposed to be my best man. The betrayal from Mark was a fresh wound, adding to the already unbearable pain. It was a mistake. It won't happen again, she pleaded, tears welling up in her eyes. But I saw no genuine remorse, only fear. You think this is something I can just forgive? You think I'm just going to forget you lied to me for a week, publicly humiliated me, and went on vacation with your ex using my money the day before our anniversary? My voice was rising, mirroring the storm inside me. Please, just listen to me, she said, tears streaming down her face, but her words felt hollow, empty promises from a broken record. Listen to you? I've listened to you for 2 years. I've listened to all your excuses, all your lies, all your gaslighting. I've listened to you tell me I was insecure when you were the one being deceitful. I've listened to you tell me you loved me while you were planning this. I was beyond furious. I was hurt, betrayed, broken, and filled with a rage I had never experienced before. It was a consuming fire that threatened to burn me alive. I looked around her apartment, the apartment we were supposed to share, the apartment we were supposed to build our future. I saw all the little things we'd shared, all the memories we'd made, or rather, the memories I thought we'd made. The framed photos, the cozy blankets, the trinkets from our trips, they were all tainted now, reminders of her deception, and I just snapped. I started throwing things, not at her, but around the apartment, a desperate attempt to release the pent-up fury that was tearing me apart. I smashed a picture frame, the glass shattering into a million pieces, mirroring the shattering of my heart. I knocked over a lamp, the light bulb exploding in a shower of sparks, extinguishing the false light she had cast over our relationship. I ripped a throw pillow apart, the feathers scattering like the broken promises she had made. I just wanted to destroy something, anything, to alleviate the pain. She was screaming, begging me to stop, but her voice was lost in the cacophony of destruction. I didn't. I couldn't. I was lost in a rage I'd never felt before, a maelstrom of anger and pain that consumed my every thought. Then I saw her laptop on the coffee table. It was the laptop where she had planned our future, the laptop where she had lied to me, the laptop where she had probably communicated with Mark. I grabbed it, my hands trembling with rage, and threw it against the wall. It shattered, the screen cracking like her lies, the internal components spilling out like her deceit. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she screamed, her voice shrill with terror. "What's wrong with me? You're the one who lied to me. You're the one who betrayed me. You're the one who broke my heart, publicly humiliated me, and used my money to do it." I grabbed her phone from the table, the phone she had used to orchestrate this betrayal, the phone where she had probably exchanged loving messages with Mark, and threw it against the wall too. It smashed into pieces, the screen flickering and dying, just like our relationship. "You're crazy," she yelled, her eyes wide with fear. "You're a maniac. You're gonna regret this." "Maybe I am," I said, my voice hoarse, my chest heaving. "But you made me this way. You turned me into this." I stormed out of her apartment, leaving her standing there, sobbing, surrounded by the wreckage, her cries echoing in the silence. I didn't look back. I drove home, shaking, my hands still trembling, my vision blurred by tears of anger and pain. I felt nothing. just empty, hollowed out, a shell of the man I once was. I swerved erratically, the road a blur, my life flashing before my eyes, a montage of broken promises and shattered dreams. I almost crashed, a near-death experience that mirrored the destruction of my relationship. The next morning was a blur of dread. My phone buzzed incessantly with texts and missed calls. Her friends, my friends, even a few mutual acquaintances, all calling me a psycho, a maniac, an abuser. Sarah, of course, was silent, but her message was clear through the chorus of condemnation. I learned through the grapevine that Mark was her high school and college sweetheart. They'd broken up because he'd cheated on her, a fact she'd conveniently omitted during our relationship. Apparently, they'd reconnected a few months prior, claiming to be just friends. But the photos, however, painted a very different picture. A picture of love and longing, a picture that shattered the illusion of our relationship. The weight of my actions settled on me like a suffocating blanket. I knew I'd crossed a line I never thought I was capable of crossing. The rage, the destruction, the sheer violence of my outburst, it terrified me as much as it did her, I imagined. I tried to reach her, to apologize, to explain, but she wouldn't answer. I went to her apartment, but she wouldn't open the door. I slid a note under the door, a pathetic attempt at reconciliation, telling her I was sorry for destroying her things, that I wanted to talk, but needed some time to cool down. Her response, a curt text message, shattered any remaining hope. "Don't contact me. You're a violent psycho. I'm filing a police report for property damage." The police called a few hours later. They wanted to talk about the incident. I told them I'd cooperate, but I also called a lawyer. He was grim. A misdemeanor charge was likely, he said. He advised me to plead guilty and hope for probation. He also strongly suggested I stay away from Sarah. The following days were a vortex of shame and regret. I replayed the scene in my head, the sound of shattering glass, her screams, the look of terror on her face. I saw myself in a distorted mirror, a stranger consumed by rage. Flashbacks haunted my dreams, vivid images of Sarah and Mark together, laughing, holding hands, their happiness a cruel reminder of my pain. Nightmares plagued my sleep, Sarah's face twisted in fear, my own hands dripping with the metaphorical blood of a destroyed relationship. My best friend, usually a voice of reason, was blunt. He told me I needed to cut all contact with Sarah. He said she was toxic, that I was better off without her. He also said, with a seriousness that chilled me, that I needed to address my anger issues. The reality of my situation began to sink in. I was facing legal consequences, social ostracization, and the devastating realization that I had become someone I didn't recognize. The anger that had consumed me had destroyed not only her belongings, but also a part of myself. I started therapy. The first session was a painful excavation of my past, a search for the roots of my anger. The therapist listened patiently as I recounted the events, the betrayal, the rage, the aftermath. She didn't judge, but she didn't sugarcoat either. She pointed out the patterns in my behavior, the way I'd bottled up my emotions, the way I'd allowed resentment to fester, the way I'd suppressed my feelings for so long. She helped me see how Sarah's subtle gaslighting had chipped away at my self-esteem, making me more vulnerable to the explosive outburst. The therapy was slow, arduous work. I had to confront uncomfortable truths about myself, about my insecurities, about my inability to communicate my feelings effectively. I had to learn to manage my anger, to express myself without resorting to violence. I had to learn to trust again, albeit slowly, to rebuild my shattered self-worth. A few weeks later, I ran into Sarah at the grocery store. It was an awkward, tense encounter. She glared at me, a mixture of fear and disgust in her eyes, and walked away. A pang of guilt, sharp and visceral, shot through me. I wanted to apologize, to explain, but I knew it was too late. I had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The legal process was a drawn-out affair. I pleaded guilty as my lawyer advised and was sentenced to probation and mandatory anger management classes. The classes were humiliating, a constant reminder of my failure, but they were also a necessary step in my rehabilitation. I spent the next few months in a state of self-imposed isolation. I avoided social gatherings, deleted my social media accounts, and focused on my therapy and my work. I was determined to rebuild myself, to become a better person. I engaged in self-destructive behavior, drinking excessively, driving recklessly, pushing myself to the point of exhaustion, all in a desperate attempt to numb the pain, to escape the memories. The process was slow and painful, but gradually I began to see a change in myself. I learned to recognize the triggers that set off my anger, to express my emotions in a healthy way, to communicate effectively. I learned to forgive myself, not for what I had done, but for who I had been. Looking back, I see the whole situation as a tragedy, a perfect storm of betrayal and rage. Sarah's actions were inexcusable, but my reaction was equally destructive. We both made mistakes, mistakes that had far-reaching consequences. I don't know what happened to Sarah. I heard she moved away, started a new life. I hope she's found happiness, that she's learned from her mistakes. I know I have. My story isn't a cautionary tale, but a testament to the destructive power of unchecked anger and the possibility of redemption. It's a reminder that even in the darkest moments, we have the capacity to change, to grow, to become better versions of ourselves. I didn't initially seek revenge. In the immediate aftermath, I was too consumed by guilt and the legal ramifications of my actions. But as time passed and the sting of betrayal lingered, a cold, hard kernel of resentment began to grow. It wasn't a violent, destructive rage, but a quiet, calculated desire for justice. The therapy sessions, ironically, became a tool for this quiet revenge. I learned to analyze Sarah's manipulative tendencies, her pattern of emotional detachment followed by sudden intense affection. I understood how she used my trust and vulnerability against me. This knowledge, though painful, gave me a strange sense of control. I realized how she had exploited my kindness, how she had used me for her own selfish gain. While I was on probation and attending anger management, I began documenting everything, not in a frantic, obsessive way, but methodically. I kept records of every text, every email, every social media post. I noted the discrepancies in her stories, the subtle inconsistencies that revealed her lies. I wasn't sure what I would do with this information, but I knew it was valuable. I uncovered her digital footprints, a trail of broken hearts and shattered lives, a pattern of deception that stretched back years. Then, a chance encounter provided an unexpected opportunity. A mutual friend, someone who had always been skeptical of Sarah, approached me. She had her own stories, tales of Sarah's past infidelities and manipulative behavior. It was like a dam breaking. Information I had dismissed or rationalized suddenly clicked into place. I learned that Sarah and Mark had a hidden agenda, a plan to defraud me out of a significant inheritance. I began to connect the dots. Sarah's solo trips weren't isolated incidents, they were a pattern. She had a history of disappearing, of creating elaborate alibis, of playing her partners against each other. Mark wasn't armed with this information. I decided to act. Not with violence, but with calculated precision. I started by anonymously sharing snippets of my findings with a few trusted friends, people who had been close to Sarah. I didn't accuse her directly, but I presented the facts, the timelines, the inconsistencies. I revealed her past, her pattern of deceit, her hidden agenda. The information spread like wildfire. Sarah's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Her friends, the ones who had initially condemned me, started to question her. Doubts were sown, and the seeds of distrust began to sprout. They saw her for what she was, a master manipulator, a weaver of lies, a woman who used and discarded people like toys. I then started to leak some of the information online through anonymous forums and social media accounts. I didn't identify anyone specifically, but the stories were distinct enough to be recognizable to those who knew Sarah. The posts detailed a pattern of emotional manipulation, infidelity, deception, and financial exploitation. I included screenshots of her messages, redacted to protect the innocent, but damning enough to paint a clear picture of her character. The online backlash was swift and brutal. Sarah, who had always cultivated a pristine online persona, was suddenly exposed. Her carefully curated image was shattered, replaced by a torrent of accusations and condemnations. The internet, once her playground, became her prison. Her social circle began to shrink. Friends distanced themselves, disgusted by her actions. Her professional reputation took a catastrophic hit. She lost her job, a high-profile position in a marketing firm, after her online behavior and the allegations of fraud were brought to the attention of her employers. She was blacklisted in her industry, her career in ruins. Mark, too, was caught in the crossfire. He was labeled a homewrecker, a manipulator, a man who preyed on vulnerable women. His own reputation, already tarnished by his past infidelity, was further damaged. He lost his job, his friends, his credibility. He became a social outcast, a pariah. Sarah's life began to unravel. The carefully constructed world she had built around herself collapsed, revealing the cracks and flaws beneath. She became a pariah, ostracized by her former friends and colleagues. She was alone, isolated, her lies catching up to her. I watched from a distance, not with satisfaction, but with a cold sense of justice. It wasn't the revenge I had initially envisioned, but it was effective. I had exposed her, not with violence, but with truth. I had used her own lies against her, her own manipulation to destroy her. Her life fell apart, not because of my rage, but because of her own actions. The lies she had told, the people she had manipulated, the trust she had betrayed, they all came back to haunt her. Her deceit, her greed, her cruelty, they were her undoing. The experience, though dark and painful, taught me a valuable lesson. Revenge, when fueled by calculated truth, can be far more devastating than any act of violence. I didn't destroy her life, she destroyed it herself. I simply held up the mirror, reflecting the monster she had become. The aftermath was a strange, unsettling quiet. The online storm eventually subsided, leaving behind a lingering residue of damaged reputations and broken relationships. Sarah disappeared from social media, her profiles deleted, her presence erased. Mark followed suit, retreating into a digital oblivion. They became cautionary tales, whispered warnings about the dangers of deception and manipulation. My own life, though irrevocably altered, began to stabilize. The therapy had equipped me with tools to manage my anger, to process my emotions in a healthy way. The legal repercussions, though a constant reminder of my past actions, became less of a burden as time passed. I had learned to control my rage, to channel my anger into constructive action. I focused on my work, throwing myself into projects with a renewed sense of purpose. I reconnected with old friends, people who had stood by me during the darkest times. I even started to date again, cautiously, tentatively. The new relationships were different. I was more open, more vulnerable, more honest about my past. I learned to communicate my needs and boundaries, to trust again, albeit slowly. The shadow of Sarah and Mark still lingered, a faint echo in the back of my mind. Occasionally, I would stumble upon a mention of them, a fleeting rumor, a whispered anecdote. They had become cautionary tales, whispered warnings about the dangers of deception and manipulation. I never sought them out. I never tried to contact them. I had moved on, not completely, but enough to build a new life, a life built on honesty and self-awareness. The revenge, if you could call it that, had served its purpose. It wasn't about inflicting pain, but about exposing the truth. It was about reclaiming my narrative, about refusing to be a victim. It was about justice, not vengeance. The experience had changed me, not just in terms of managing my anger, but in a fundamental way. I had learned the fragility of trust, the destructive power of lies, and the importance of self-respect. I had learned the value of honesty, the importance of communication, and the necessity of forgiveness, both for myself and for others. I also learned that revenge, even when justified, leaves a bitter taste. It doesn't heal the wounds, it merely exposes them. The true healing comes from within, from confronting your own demons and building a better future. Years later, I received an anonymous email. It was a long, rambling message, filled with apologies and regrets. It was from Sarah. She wrote about her struggles, her isolation, her attempts to rebuild her life. She admitted her mistakes, her lies, her manipulation. She acknowledged the pain she had caused, not just to me, but to everyone around her. She confessed to her hidden agenda, her plan to defraud me, her cruelty. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't expect it. She simply wanted me to know that she understood the consequences of her actions. She wanted me to know that she was paying the price for her sins. I read the email, a strange mix of emotions swirling within me. There was no anger, no resentment, just a quiet sense of closure. There was a flicker of pity, a brief moment of compassion for the woman who had once been the center of my world. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Her words, though belated, were enough. They were a testament to the destructive power of her own choices, a confirmation of the justice I had sought. The experience had taught me that closure isn't always about confrontation or forgiveness. Sometimes it's simply about understanding, about acknowledging the past, and moving forward. It's about learning from your mistakes, about growing from your pain, about becoming a better version of yourself. I had moved on, not because I had forgotten, but because I had learned. I had learned to forgive myself, to forgive her, and to build a life free from the shadows of the past. The revenge, ultimately, wasn't about her. It was about me. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my peace of mind. It was about transforming my pain into strength, my anger into wisdom, and my betrayal into a better future. It was about finding redemption, not in her downfall, but in my own rebirth. If you thought that was crazy, hit that like button and subscribe for more wild stories. And if you didn't quite enjoy it, feel free to hit the dislike. Your feedback means a lot. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think, or share your own experiences. And don't forget to check out my other videos for more insane tales. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.